Hello and welcome everyone! Delightful fluffy dinner rolls don't have to be devilishly difficult to bake. Today let's roll with the punches and take on those dastardly dinner rolls. Today's recipe uses a technique known as Tangzhong, also known as a water brew starter. This helps to ensure that the rolls are fluffy every time and aids in preventing them from drying out or getting crusty. To make things easier and more reliable, the best way to measure your ingredients is by weight, rather than by volume for this recipe. However, I have included both measurements for anyone lacking a kitchen scale. If you're lacking a kitchen scale though, I highly recommend purchasing one. Before we go over the ingredients for today's recipe, you'll also be needing a stand mixer. You can do everything in this recipe by hand, but you'll be absolutely exhausted by the end. Save yourself the bread ache and use a stand mixer. Ready or not, let's get rolling. For the starter, you will need 45 grams or 3 tablespoons of water, 45 grams or 3 tablespoons of whole milk, 18 grams or 2 tablespoons of flour. Bread flour works the best, but all-purpose flour is okay as well. For the dough, you will need 300 grams or about 2 cups of flour. Again, bread flour works the best, but all-purpose flour works as well. 50 grams or 1/4 of a cup of sugar, 25 grams or 3 tablespoons of skim milk powder, 1 tablespoon of instant yeast, 1 teaspoon of salt, 115 grams or 1/2 a cup of whole milk, 60 grams or 1/4 of a cup of melted butter, and 1 large egg. You will also need 1 egg and a tablespoon of cream or milk to make an egg wash later. Last but not least, you'll also need a 9x9 baking pan. Firstly, we will prepare the starter. In a small saucepan, combine the 45 grams of water, 45 grams of milk, and 18 grams of flour. Then whisk them together until there are no lumps remaining. Heat the saucepan over low heat, making sure to stir frequently. Cook this concoction until it thickens and becomes paste-like. The spatula should be able to make clear lines in the bottom of the pan without it flowing back together. Once the starter has adequately thickened, you are going to transfer it to a small bowl. Cover it with plastic wrap and put it into the refrigerator for several minutes. We want it to cool somewhat before we use it. Next, we'll prepare the dough. In the bowl of a stand mixer, combine the flour, sugar, skim milk powder, yeast, and salt. Then stir them all together to make sure they're well combined. Set it aside and move on to the wet ingredients. Start by warming your milk. I like to bring it up to 120 degrees Fahrenheit in the microwave. This helps make sure the butter doesn't congeal when we combine all of the wet ingredients together. Once the milk is warmed, combine the milk, starter, melted butter, and egg in a measuring cup or bowl. Then whisk them all together. Attach your dough hook to the stand mixer, then with it on low speed, slowly pour over the wet ingredients. Continue mixing on low speed until the dough forms. The dough will be very sticky, but resist the temptation to add more flour. Once the dough has formed, increase the speed of the mixer to medium-low and continue kneading the dough until it is smooth and no longer sticky. This will take quite a while, at least 15 minutes or more. The exact time will be different for each batch depending on your flour and local humidity. 15 minutes is a good starting point though. We are looking for a dough that feels slightly sticky or tacky, but not so sticky it would be unworkable. If your dough is too sticky or unworkable, then you can add a little bit of extra flour. No more than 1 tablespoon at a time though, until the dough gets to the correct state. Using lightly oiled hands, shape the dough into a ball and then transfer it to a greased bowl or container. Cover tightly with plastic wrap and allow it to rise until doubled in size. The rise greatly depends on the temperature, so a warmer location is better. If your oven has a proof setting, that is perfect for rising the dough. The first rise should take about 60 or more minutes. Once the first rise is complete, grease a 9x9 baking pan with fat or non-stick cooking spray, turn out the dough onto a work surface and begin dividing it into 9 equal pieces. I use my scale for this, but you can just pat out the dough into a rectangle and cut it into 9 pieces as well. Once divided, cover the pieces loosely with plastic. Then, working with one piece of dough at a time, form smooth taut balls. Very similar to how we formed the burger buns in a previous video. Place each formed ball into the pan, and once they are all formed, cover the pan loosely with plastic wrap. Let the rolls rise until they are nice and puffy, about 40 to 50 minutes. Again, this depends on room temperature. Be sure to preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit at least 10 minutes before the rolls have risen. I start preheating my oven after the rolls have been rising for about 30 minutes. Once the rolls have risen, make your egg wash. Vigorously whisk together an egg and a tablespoon of cream or milk. Whisk until it is all nice and consistent. Remove the plastic from your rolls and brush them gently with the egg wash. Finally, place them in the 350 degree oven and bake them for 20 to 30 minutes or until they are golden brown. An instant read thermometer inserted into the center of the middle roll should read at least 190 degrees Fahrenheit when the rolls are ready. Finally, remove the rolls from the oven. If you want to ensure that the buns stay nice and soft, brush them immediately with some melted butter. Let them cool in the pan for 10 minutes. If needed, use a paring knife to cut around the edge of the baking pan and release the buns from the pan. Then flip them out and set them on a cooling rack. They're excellent warm, or you can allow them to cool to room temperature. And here you have them, delightful dinner rolls. They're soft and fluffy, and they don't go stale very fast. You can keep them in an airtight container on your counter for a few days, or you can freeze them and then enjoy them as you want. Hopefully the recipe will be as successful for you as it has been for me over the past few years. If this recipe inspires you to give it a try, be sure to let me know how it turns out. Feel free to send me pictures of your results on Instagram or Twitter. If you haven't done so already, be sure to bash the like button, hit subscribe, and ring the bell so that you don't miss any future episodes of Andrew's Treats and Eats. If you have any comments, suggestions, or ideas for future recipes, then be sure to leave them in the comments section down below. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time on Andrew's Treats and Eats.